Hello everyone. Happy Friday. I am happy to be here with you in today's session. I will um, I will be talking about exceptions and also about HTTP, as these are topics that you will be hearing a lot during the next lessons, the last lessons of your nano degree. So I am very excited to talk about this, and let's get started. Please, as always, if you have any questions, please post them in the chat, and at the end, I will take a time to answer them. Okay, so let's get started. Let me share my screen. Awesome. So let's start with the first of these concepts, HTTP. HTTP means Hypertext Transfer Protocol. This protocol is responsible of transmitting hypermedia documents such as HTML. It was designed to for communication between web browsers and web servers, but it can also be used for other purposes. HTTP is an stateless protocol. That means that the server does not keep any data or states between the two requests. So that is what makes HTTP amazing, and that's why lots of developers in general in the industry, we are using this protocol pretty much on a daily basis. Now, with HTTP, clients and servers communicate by exchanging individual messages as opposite to the stream of data. The messages sent by the client, usually a web browser, are called requests. So let's imagine you are in your web browser, I don't know, Google Chrome or Internet Explorer, Mozilla. You're requesting to see YouTube or Udacity, and in that moment you are making a request to a server. And the messages that the server sends are answers to those requests. So usually we will need to communicate through the internet. We're making requests by web document or to get a web document. Also, you can make a request from a mobile device. So that's why it's relevant to this lesson. When the server receives a request, it always returns a response. Each response has a code. I would not talk about each one because there are many codes of response, but here are some of the most common code responses. The first one is 200. That means the server is saying that everything is great. So let's think that you request to see udacity.com. If the server responds 200, that means everything went well. So it was able to find the page and to display it to you. So 200 is the code we always want, because that means everything in the request was well formatted, and we are receiving the proper answer. However, not always we have that answer. We don't receive 200 all the time. We can receive 400. That means it's a bad request. In simple terms, when you receive 400, that means that probably you are sending the information to make that request in an incorrect format. So the server is not able to provide information, okay? And it's different to the 404 that is not found. That means the server wasn't able to find the resource. That is not related to the way you make the request. It's more related to the unavailability of that resource you are looking for, okay? And finally, the 500 internal server error, that means something is happening with the server. There is nothing you can do about it. It's something that the server administration needs to fix. If you want to know more about HTTP response status code, I would recommend to follow that link that is in this slide, and you will be able to see a whole list of the HTTP response status codes. I would highly recommend for you to document yourself a little more about this topic. It's something that is very interesting, and in some point in your career as a mobile developer, you will need it. Okay, so how this is relevant to Android, you may be wondering. The reason is that Android provides the class HTTP URL connection to make and handle requests to an external URL. This represents a whole world of possibilities because most of the applications will require a service provider in order to avoid storing the information locally, especially when we are talking about mobile devices. We need for another provider. We can't store information like whole like big data in our mobile device, but in some point we may need that information in order to populate or recycler views or views in general, any kind of view you are using. So if you think about it, that is great because mobile devices have different kind of applications, and it is great to consume real-time information provided by APIs, for example, APIs. Okay, so that's why it's relevant, and that's something that is very important for us. We may use APIs like to know about the weather or to know about the traffic, the earthquakes around the world. So we will need to make URL connections, that's why. Now, this is an example to retrieve the web page, android.com. If you see, we are using an object, URL object, to store the address we are looking for, we are requesting, and then we have an object from the class HTTP URL connection. Once we have opened the connection, then we are storing the information in the buffer stream. In this case, we are just reading line by line what is in that page, and finally, we disconnect the URL connection. This is an example you can find in the Android developers website. Now, as you can see here, I have a blog that says try and finally. So what is that? That is a very important block that we use to manage exceptions. So the exceptions are unwanted or unexpected events that occurs during the execution of a program in runtime. So that is a disruption of the normal flow of the program instructions. There are many different types of exceptions, and all the exceptions and errors extend from a common Java-Lang throwable parent class. Only throwable objects can be thrown and called. An exception can happen when reading a file, making an arithmetic operation, for example, or making an HTTP request, between many other reasons. Here you can see IO exceptions, file not found exception, etc. Now, to handle an exception, Java provides an inbuilt exceptional handling try-catch block. The normal call goes into the try block. So if you are trying to connect to a server, here is where you will write your code. If you are trying to connect to a database, it's the same. Any kind of code that can throw an error that we are not expecting may be or must be inside the try block. Now the exception is always going to be in the catch block. So for example, you are trying to connect to a server, but for some reason, or for many reasons, that server may be not online, or maybe throwing an error, maybe it didn't find the page you were looking for. So that code must be in the catch exception. So you can instead stopping unexpectedly your application, you can manage smoothly that exception. More information about this can be found in the link I am providing at the bottom of the slide. Now, there is another very interesting way to handle an exception, and it is the try-catch finally. This is a control structure where the code in the section finally will always be executed. So in this case, we have the same structure at the beginning, try. So maybe you can specify in this block what the regular code. So you are trying to connect to a server, you will set your code in this area, in this block. If you are trying to connect to a database or you are trying to read a file, this is the section you want to write your code for. And then in catch, you will handle all the exceptions that could be happening. The file wasn't in the specified route, in the specified path, or the server wasn't online or didn't find the resource, etc. And the finally clause will always run. Will always run. It doesn't matter if there was an error or if it wasn't. Finally, this is an example of what I was talking about. As you can see here, we are including the three sections, the three blocks. Now, my recommendation is always catch the exceptions. Catching exceptions is a good practice. It allows you as a developer to have control of your application and avoid unexpected errors that can upset your users. Think about it. If you are using a mobile application that predicts the weather, I mean the app is providing you the forecast, you will not be happy if unexpectedly it stops, right? So maybe in that moment you will just uninstall the app and look for another one. So you don't want that. You want for your users to be happy. So catching the exceptions will avoid unexpected errors. For your incoming project, every time you make an HTTP request, be sure to handle the response of the server properly. And that's all about HTTP and exceptions for now. But I am providing some useful resources for you to get access to more information about these topics. And now, please post your questions in the chat so I can answer them, please. Okay, and I think next week will be our last formal webinar where I will be providing some tips about your next project, your next and last project. It's amazing how you are here at the end of the nano degree. And also, I think it's one of the best and complete projects. I will highly recommend for you if you have interest in display a portfolio. Maybe you can start thinking about opening a mobile developer, an Android developer account, so you can publish your projects, the projects you have completed within this nano degree. Okay, well, I don't see any questions in the chat, but please feel free to direct me anytime if you need help in the Slack channel. And as always, thank you very much for joining and see you next week.